vintage lens. I picked up a lens that I've wanted for a while, and I don't know why I haven't pulled the trigger on it, because it cost me £20. Bye-oh. This is very dusty Helios 44-2, which kind of makes it sound like it's a 44mm. It's not, 58mm. So let's see what it looks like.
Leaves me nothing, looking for anything real. Give me something, can I reach you right? 'Cause in my mind, I'm all over you, setting me on fire, you see my
So first of all, you need to adapt it. I've got a lot of adapters. I like vintage lenses. This is a screw mount one called a 42, M42? I don't know, something like that. This is a really small lens. Oh, it feels so... Let's see what it looks like on the A7R. This is a pretty brutal test for it because this camera has a 45 megapixel sensor, and this lens is designed in the days of film. This is also vintage, but new to me. This is a Canon TSE 45mm, which is a tilt shift lens. Oh, this is actually surprisingly sharp. Yeah, steady shot on, manual. Let's go 55. Oh, it's kind of crunchy. So it's got an aperture click, but then if you set it all the way to 18, 16, you can do like a clickless aperture. But if you want to just lock it in, you can just set it to 2, and then the little clickless one won't. That's quite nice. I really want to take this outside, but I don't have the time. Feels like the build quality is really good, but then it also feels like it's lived a life. It's pretty worn down in spots. The focusing, it's got a little bit of a grind to it. I think I can take it apart and put some lube in there. There's always time for lube. The aperture, like it's fine. The problem is, because it's a screw mount and it's quite stiff, the aperture, once it did this to me. I've had it for what, an hour, where it unscrewed its mount instead of changing the aperture, which is kind of fine, like whatever. Just got to be a little bit more careful with it. It's sharp, it seems really nice and sharp. I tried it at sort of f8, then f4, and then wide open at f2. Seems pretty nice. I didn't realize, so I bought this the other day and then I started searching around on the internet for like info about them. I'd sort of knew what they were, you know, I'd heard about it. Mark Bone, is that his name? He's like a documentary filmmaker. This is, for me, it's more for video. And he's a videographer, filmmaker, whatever you want to call it. And he sort of said, like, get something like this. And it's a focal length that I don't really have. I have primes in the 35, I've got primes 28, I've got primes that are, I mean, technically I've got a 45 now because I've got the tilt shift lens. Then the next one up from that, that's a prime, is 90, that's another tilt shift lens, and then up from that is a 135. So I don't have anything in that sort of 50-ish millimeter. And so I thought, yeah, let's go for it. 20 quid, £3 shipping. Can't really beat it for that. Started looking at like videos. Mainly I was looking for like how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to sort of re-lube it, things like that. All the kind of important things with vintage lenses. And I'm pretty comfortable taking stuff like this apart. So I probably will be taking it apart at some point, cleaning it up and making it all nice. Because I think that focus ring is going to be nice once it gets greased. But the other thing that came up is the fact that this lens, or at least a version of this lens, was used in the new Batman film. It was only used for a couple of shots. The shots where the car's like coming out of the fire, you know, when he's chasing the penguin. I've not actually seen the film, I've seen the trailer. They used rehoused versions of these, so $1,000 versions of these, which basically just means a company takes this apart and puts it in like a dedicated cinema lens body. They use those in like the crash cams because they didn't want to damage the $100,000 anamorphic whatevers they were using, but this gave a nice grungy look with similar, if not the same, characteristics as those anamorphics that they were using. So that's pretty interesting. This is the lens they used on Batman. I really love vintage lenses. A lot of people, especially photographers I've found, don't love vintage lenses because they're really after the most beautiful, crisp, clear, pristine image that they possibly can. They don't want any dust, any grime, anything. They definitely don't want the weirdness that this puts out. Like portrait photographers, for example, might be into things like this. I definitely am, but I wouldn't class myself as a photographer, even though, I mean, that sounds stupid to say because photography makes up a portion of my income, but I don't class myself as a photographer really. This is definitely gonna be used on a narrative project that I've got coming up, which it's been a long time in the making. It's my fault that it's not happened yet, but I think this will be really nice on that. So a little bit of info on these guys. These were made, this one specifically was made in 1973. They were made from like the late 50s, early 60s in Russia, or the USSR as it was known at the time. They were mass produced in the millions. That's why you can find them pretty cheap. It's a really easy focal length to produce, the sort of 50 to 58. I think that might be the easiest focal length to make optics for. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a scientist when it comes to things like this. When it comes to I'm not a scientist at all. I'm not a scientist. Don't quote me on that. I just know that like the 50-ish range is easy to design for, and 58 is definitely in that range, and might even be the easiest. It's a screw mount lens. It was originally, obviously, because of the time, for film cameras, 35mm film. It will stretch to fit some smaller medium format sensors. I say sensors because maybe not medium format film. Smallest medium format film is probably the 645, so 6 centimeters by 4.5 centimeters. Don't think it will cover that, but it will, I'm led to believe, cover the Fuji medium format sensors. They're smaller than like true medium format. They're just a little bit bigger than full frame. It's a heavy lens. It's gonna last. It's lasted till now. It's gonna last another 100 years. As long as it's kept clean, kept dust free. Dust not so much, but fungus. If fungus starts growing in your lens, it can be cleaned off, but it will eventually start like etching the glass, and at that point nothing can be done. You just got to live with it. I'm a big fan of vintage lenses. If you are too, and you don't know anything about this, you haven't seen it before, go out and check one out. It's a really interesting lens. I think vintage lenses on the whole are very interesting. There's a video I'll link here, which is about the Nucleus Nano from Tilta. That is a follow focus, wireless follow focus. In that video I talk about how it adds functionality to vintage lenses, so go check that one out. And I'll see you in the next one. Laters.